I'd been married to James for 22 years. 5 years ago, he was diagnosed with early-onset dementia. At first, it was small things, forgetting where he'd left his keys, mixing up the days of the week, calling our neighbor Mr. Thompson when his name was clearly Greg. We adjusted. I became his calendar, his reminder, his safe place when the fog settled in. But lately, something had changed. James had started doing things that didn't fit the pattern of dementia. I'd come home from the grocery store to find him sitting in the dark, facing the front door like he was waiting for someone. Food would disappear from the fridge overnight, yet he'd insist he hadn't touched it. Sometimes, I'd hear him whispering, soft, urgent words, though when I stepped into the room, he'd just smile vaguely, as if nothing had happened. One night, I woke up at 2 a.m. to find our back door unlocked and wide open. James was asleep in bed beside me, breathing steadily. But when I touched his hands, they were cold. That's when the knot of fear began to form in my stomach. This wasn't just memory loss anymore. Something else was happening. And I was going to find out what. The next morning, I decided to ask him directly. "James," I said gently over breakfast, "did you go outside last night?" He looked at me blankly for a moment, then smiled. "Outside?" "No, we were sleeping, weren't we?" He took another bite of his toast, as if the question had never been asked. I wanted to believe him, but his slippers were still damp. That week, the oddities piled up. One afternoon, I found muddy footprints in the hallway leading from the back door to the living room. They weren't James's size. And twice, I noticed small scratches on his forearms, thin, angry red lines that he couldn't explain. I called his doctor, thinking maybe his dementia had taken an unusual turn, but she was puzzled. "These aren't typical symptoms," she said. "Has anyone else been in the house?" Her words stuck with me. Had anyone else been in the house? I'd never given James a spare key, at least, I didn't think I had. But there were moments when he seemed to be hiding something, and I couldn't ignore the feeling that someone was here when I wasn't. That's when the idea of a hidden camera came to me. If James was wandering, or if someone was visiting, the camera would catch it. I just wasn't prepared for what it would actually reveal. I ordered 2 discrete cameras that could blend into our home decor, one shaped like a digital clock for the living room, another hidden inside a picture frame for the kitchen. I told James they were motion detectors to help me feel safer at night, and he just nodded absently. For 2 days, nothing unusual happened. The footage showed exactly what I expected, me making coffee, James sitting in his favorite chair staring at the TV, and the occasional delivery driver dropping off packages. Then came the third night. It was around 1:15 a.m. when I was jolted awake by a faint click from downstairs. I stayed in bed, heart pounding, listening. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, crossed the kitchen. The next morning, I checked the footage. At first, it was just James, shuffling into the kitchen in his pajamas. He stood there for a moment, glancing toward the back door. Then, the door opened. A woman stepped inside. She was middle-aged, with short dark hair, wearing a heavy coat despite the mild weather. She walked straight to James and hugged him like they'd known each other for years. He whispered something in her ear, and she nodded. Then she placed a folded envelope on the kitchen counter, and they both disappeared toward the living room, out of the camera's view. My hands shook as I paused the video. Who was she? And what was she giving my husband? I replayed the footage again and again, zooming in on the envelope. It was plain white, no markings, but it looked thick, too thick for a simple letter. All morning, James acted as if nothing had happened. He asked if I wanted pancakes for breakfast, complimented the flowers on the table, and even hummed a little tune while washing dishes. But I couldn't stop thinking about that woman. By mid-afternoon, my curiosity turned into resolve. I waited until James went down for his nap. He usually slept for an hour after lunch, then quietly searched the living room. I checked behind cushions, under furniture, even inside the DVD cases. Nothing. Finally, I pulled open the bottom drawer of the desk. Beneath a stack of old utility bills, I found the envelope. Inside was a wad of cash, hundreds of dollars in neatly folded 20s, and a small brass key. I froze. Why would James, a man with advanced dementia, have this? And why was a stranger delivering it in the middle of the night? When James woke up, I decided to confront him, gently. "James, where did this money come from?" I held up the envelope. He blinked at it, his face unreadable. Then he smiled faintly and said, "It's for when the time comes." The time for what? I pressed. But his eyes had already glazed over, as if the conversation had never happened. That night, I barely slept. His words kept echoing in my mind, "when the time comes." The next evening, I set the cameras to record continuously instead of motion-triggered, determined to catch every detail. Around 1:10 a.m., James stirred in bed. I watched silently from my phone app as he slipped on his slippers and shuffled downstairs. The back door opened again. This time, the woman wasn't alone. A tall man in a baseball cap followed her in, carrying what looked like a small locked box. They spoke in hushed voices. James pointed toward the basement door. The man handed him a folded piece of paper, which James slipped into his pajama pocket. Then, without even glancing toward the cameras, they both went downstairs with my husband. For the next 45 minutes, the kitchen camera showed nothing but an empty room. Then they returned, James now carrying the locked box. The man took the envelope back from the counter, nodded at James, and they left through the back door. James returned to bed as if nothing had happened. My hands were trembling as I stopped the playback. There was only one problem. We didn't have a basement. The realization hit me like ice water down my back. Our house was built on a crawl space, barely enough room for pipes and wiring, let alone people. So where exactly had they gone? The next morning, I waited until James was distracted with his crossword puzzle, then slipped into the kitchen and examined the floor near the basement door. It wasn't even a real door, just an old pantry closet. But when I pulled everything out, canned goods, cleaning supplies, a dusty mop bucket, I noticed the back wall looked wrong. It was newer wood, with a faint seam running vertically. I pressed gently, and to my shock, the panel gave way with a soft click, revealing a narrow staircase leading downward. I swallowed hard and descended, my phone flashlight cutting through the darkness. The air was cool and smelled faintly of earth. At the bottom was a small, hidden room, bare concrete walls, a single hanging bulb, and an old metal filing cabinet in the corner. Inside the cabinet were stacks of yellowed documents, boxes of photographs, and, most startling, rows of leather-bound ledgers filled with handwritten entries. Every ledger had James's name on the inside cover. Some dated back decades, long before his dementia diagnosis. And what they detailed didn't look legal. I flipped through one of the ledgers, my hands trembling. Each page was a careful record of dates, names, and dollar amounts, sometimes in the tens of thousands. In the margins were notes like shipment arrived or payment cleared. One name appeared over and over again, Harper. I'd never heard James mention a Harper before, but the handwriting was undeniably his. Even more chilling, the entries didn't stop when his dementia started 5 years ago. In fact, the transactions had increased. I pulled up my phone and snapped as many photos as I could, stuffing the ledgers back exactly as I'd found them. When I climbed back upstairs, my mind was racing. If James's memory was failing, someone else had to be helping him keep this operation going, possibly the woman and the man from the footage. That evening, I decided to push him again, this time more firmly. "James," I said, sitting across from him at the table, "who is Harper?" He looked at me for a long moment, his expression caught between confusion and something sharper, almost calculating. Finally, he said, "They helped me when no one else would. I owe them." "Owe them what?" I asked. His lips curved into a faint, almost secretive smile. "You'll find out soon enough," he murmured. I didn't realize until later that he was warning me. The next day, I noticed James was unusually restless. He kept glancing at the clock, pacing from room to room. Around 8 p.m., he disappeared into the bedroom and emerged wearing a pressed shirt and slacks, something he hadn't bothered with in years. "Where are you going?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. "Meeting an old friend," he said with that same sly smile. I offered to drive him, but he shook his head. "No. You stay here. It's safer." The word safer sent a shiver through me. As soon as he left, I pulled up the camera feed on my phone. He got into a dark sedan waiting at the curb, driven by the same man from before. They drove off into the night. I debated calling the police, but what would I even say? That my husband with dementia had a secret basement and mysterious visitors? They'd probably think I was imagining things. An hour later, the feed from the kitchen camera lit up. The woman from before was back, alone this time. She walked straight to the pantry, disappeared behind the false wall, and didn't emerge for nearly 20 minutes. When she finally came out, she was carrying the locked box. She left without so much as glancing at the camera. I realized then, whatever James was involved in, it was still happening, right under my nose. And I had no idea how dangerous these people might be. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the house made me tense, every shadow looked like someone standing in the doorway. By morning, James was back, sitting at the kitchen table as if nothing had happened, sipping coffee and humming. I decided to act before fear paralyzed me completely. While he was distracted in the garden, I returned to the basement room and photographed everything, the ledgers, the documents, even the photographs. One set of photos caught my attention. They showed people exchanging envelopes in dimly lit parking lots, faces partially obscured but still visible. Some of them looked disturbingly familiar, business owners in our small town, even a city council member. When I zoomed in on one image, my stomach dropped. There was James, standing beside Harper, a tall man with the same baseball cap from the footage, shaking hands over the locked box. It wasn't just some shady side business. This looked like an entire network. I copied the files onto a flash drive, hid it in my purse, and went upstairs. My plan was to drop it off anonymously with the police. But as I reached for my keys, James's voice stopped me cold. "Going somewhere, dear?" He was standing in the hallway, blocking the door. And in his hand was the exact same locked box I'd seen in the footage. I froze, my pulse thundering in my ears. "Where did you get that?" I asked, trying to keep my tone steady. James tilted his head, almost amused. "You've been very curious lately. Too curious." He set the box on the hall table between us, then slowly pushed it toward me. "Go ahead. Open it." My hands shook as I unlatched it. Inside wasn't money, at least, not entirely. There were bundles of cash, yes, but also stacks of IDs, passports, and what looked like confidential medical files. What is this?" I whispered. "Protection," he said simply. "From people who would rather we didn't exist." Before I could process that, the front door opened and the woman from the footage stepped in, followed by Harper. James's voice hardened. "You have two choices. Either you trust me and stay quiet, or you walk away and never come back." The woman's eyes were cold, but Harper's gaze lingered on me, almost pitying. "I suggest you decide quickly," James added. "They don't like loose ends." At that moment, I realized my husband's dementia hadn't stolen his mind completely, he'd been hiding behind it, running something dangerous right under everyone's noses. And now, I was in it, whether I wanted to be or not.